Today on Notsam Wrestling, Seth Rollins is out, turned on by the Vision. Jacob Fatu is out. He got all his teeth knocked out of his mouth. Sting is back in AEW and so much more. Let's get to recording before everything changes again. This is Notsam Wrestling. In a week, normally in a week that all of a sudden gets plagued by injuries that should have really serious ramifications on where storylines are going in the WWE, we end up with more to talk about storyline-wise than we did going in. Let me explain. So, we go to SmackDown. By the way, I think 2 weeks in a row that SmackDown has been better than usual. SmackDown has been really good. And we start the show with Cody cutting a promo. Now, this was kind of advertised as important because this is Cody's first promo post-loss to Seth Rollins. And when Cody comes out, he's dressed all in black. And I think that there is significance to that. I don't think Cody Rhodes is doing things by mistake, especially picking suits by mistake. As much pride as Cody Rhodes has in those suits, I cannot believe even for a moment that he's picking out the colors by mistake. And Cody cuts this promo that basically proves right our theory about what was pushed forward on the Go Home episode of SmackDown before Crown Jewel, which was you had two options really with the Cody Rhodes-Seth Rollins match. One was to make it must win on both sides, and that would require Cody Rhodes to get out there and explain why, as somebody who is aspiring to be looked at as by everybody as the quarterback, Cody had to win. Or you could just make this must win for Seth Rollins. Should win for Cody Rhodes, but must win for Seth Rollins. And that is the direction that they chose to go in. It was only must win for Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins did indeed win. Cody Rhodes kind of covered his tracks by explaining that, part of being the quarterback means knowing that he's got the strongest team behind him that the WWE has ever had. And there's person after person after person to pick up the ball should he drop it. I believe he even mentioned Jacob Fatu in that Go Home promo. So now he says he says he doesn't see any reason why he and Seth Rollins should ever have to wrestle again, but he knows that's just not the way things work, which is really interesting because if I had just lost to Seth Rollins, I would want to make sure, if I had 3-0 going in against Seth and even knew it to the point where going in, I made the little 3-0 hand gesture, just letting everybody know I beat this guy 3 times. He's beaten me 0 times. If he's coming back with 1, and that's the most recent one, I wouldn't want to leave it at that. I would want to make sure that maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere down the road, this match happened again. So I think that in and of itself, that statement, the fact that he doesn't feel like he ever has to wrestle Seth Rollins again, the fact that he would be okay leaving it there, the fact that he doesn't have more to say about it, the fact that he goes, well, Seth has his own problems, which is true, and we'll get there on Monday Night Raw. So in the meantime, he's going to let Seth deal with Monday Night Raw and the Vision, and Cody Rhodes is going to take care of business right there on SmackDown. And then he moves on to the next subject, which already I go, okay, that's a little iffy for me, to tell you the truth, to not really dive further, because to me, the next opponent that he has would go, hey man, you don't even have a perfect record since you re-won the championship. This on paper has not been a great year for Cody Rhodes. He lost the championship at WrestleMania. He was able to win it back, but at WrestleMania, he lost the championship to John Cena. And now he goes to Crown Jewel and he loses to somebody that he was once 3-0 against, Seth Rollins. So it really, so far, not the best year in the world for Cody Rhodes. But he says we got a number 1 contenders match tonight that he's looking forward to. It's Drew McIntyre versus Jacob Fatu. Now, we will get to everything going on with Jacob Fatu, but he ends up getting attacked in a locker room. There had been rumors all day, and I think the day before, for at least a day or two leading up to SmackDown, that Jacob Fatu was actually injured, and that Jacob Fatu may be out of action until next year. But he had this match, this number 1 contenders match advertised for SmackDown. And then Nick Aldis put out the SmackDown video that said hey, the not only is the match happening, and then he opened SmackDown with it, that not only is the Jacob Fatu Drew McIntyre match happening, but now it is officially a number one contenders match. And you go, oh, okay. Jacob Fatu gets jumped, all his teeth get knocked out of his mouth, and they're left on the cement in front of him. He's got blood coming out of his mouth. He can't believe what's just happened. And Drew McIntyre's music plays. It's too late to figure anything out. Drew goes right to the ring. And Drew insists that he had nothing to do with what happened to Jacob Fatu and tells the referee to raise his arm. Nick Aldis comes out. I know you did it. Drew McIntyre says, you know me, I didn't do it. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but that's when we get, I love this version of Cody. Enough! That's when Cody's really fed up. That's when Cody's like, and Cody will let the kids play. He'll let the kids play, and he'll let the kids play, and the kids are getting irritating, but he'll let the kids play. And the kids are doing things they're not supposed to, just a little bit, and he'll let the kids play. And the kids are doing things that he told them earlier not to do, but he'll let the kids play. And they're to level 6, okay. And they're to level 7, okay. Once they get to level 8, enough! That's when Angry Dad Cody comes out. Enough! He's had it up to here with this Drew McIntyre making excuses, and he says, you want the fight? And by the way, he's uncharacteristically aggressive with Drew McIntyre, which again, I'm leading into like the promo was a little bit uncharacteristic, talking about Seth Rollins, of Cody Rhodes. And then his aggression towards Drew McIntyre was uncharacteristic. Leading with his emotion is uncharacteristic. Cody has excused himself before. He's let the world know he is a bit of a messy king. And I guess he is. Because on this given day, our messy king led with his heart instead of his brain and said, we could do this right now. And they go forth and they start this match. And here we go. It's Cody versus Drew. And Cody's still in his suit. Loosens up his buttons a little bit, takes off his jacket. But they start brawling into the crowd. They go to commercial break. They come back. And the match is official. The match is going, and it's Cody and Drew, and it's not as catch can. It's aggressive, and Drew is more on the defense than anything else. Now, Drew is not expecting this match to happen, but he's certainly not expecting this match to happen with Cody as angry as he is. And Cody ends up, they're on the outside of the ring, and Cody's now getting frustrated, and he gets knocked over into the timekeeper's area, and Drew comes over, and Cody grabs the WWE Championship and hits Drew McIntyre in the side of the head with it. Now, look, the truth is, I'm watching this, and I have to tell you, and maybe this is why it was done. Maybe this is the idea. Maybe this is, all part of the plan. But I'm watching this going, well, if there was ever a better time to just pull the trigger and put the title on Drew McIntyre, imagine that. We have to change plans on Monday Night Raw, so what do we do? Something absolutely, I would use the word catastrophic for Seth Rollins, something nobody saw coming on that night, and have the vision turn on Seth Rollins. Well, everything has to change on SmackDown as well because the superstar may or may not be injured, so what are we going to do? Well, everybody came expecting a number one contenders match. They're not going to get it. What if we just put the title on Drew McIntyre? And I let my hopes get the best of me. I thought we might actually see it, and quite frankly, I wanted to see it. I love Cody Rhodes, and I think Cody Rhodes is a great babyface, and I think that is something that should be brought up as much as I bring it up, and if not even more, because I don't think he gets enough credit for what he's done, being a true babyface in the modern era, who's the top guy. But Drew McIntyre doesn't win. Not only does Drew McIntyre not win, Cody gets disqualified. Drew McIntyre technically wins the match, but Cody gets disqualified. We get this impromptu WWE Championship match ended on a DQ. And I felt a type of way about it when it first happened, when I hadn't sat and thought about it. I said, number one, I know you don't want to do quick title changes all the time. I know that this would be the second time that Cody would have lost that title in a calendar year. I know that you would be able to go back and look at Cody's second run and go, it wasn't even really a run. I mean, he beat Drew McIntyre at WrestlePalooza. But other than that, I mean, he was out for a month filming Street Fighter. He comes back and he loses to Seth Rollins. And now he loses to Drew McIntyre. But listen, man, I was all for Cody losing at WrestleMania 39. I thought, the fact that he had won everything leading up to WrestleMania 39 was not going to put him in a position to win. He was injured, but he beat Seth Rollins 3 times. Then he went out with an injury. Then he came back and won the Royal Rumble. Time to go to WrestleMania. And everybody says, well, yeah, let's make him the champion now. I never thought so. And if you go back to those podcasts, you can see or listen or whatever that I said it even at the time, that I think Cody, I want to see that journey. I wanted to see Cody have to overcome Brock Lesnar. I wanted to see Cody find his way back into the Royal Rumble match. I wanted to see Cody have to win that Royal Rumble match twice. I liked seeing Cody have to beat The Rock and The Rock's politics and that story being told. I thought all of that and Cody fighting against all of that led to this amazing moment where you couldn't help but root for Cody to finish the story, and then he finally does. And I think that you could have put Cody's back against the wall here, right? You could have said, well, look, Cody, you let your eye off the prize. You were all focused on beating Cena, and you beat Cena. But then you went away to film a movie. Then you gloated about being 3-0 against Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins beat you. Then you got overly emotional and gave Drew McIntyre a WWE Championship match when you didn't even have your gear on. And you'd have all the excuses in the world as to why Cody lost that match and Drew McIntyre was able to win the championship. But Drew McIntyre would be absolutely insufferable as WWE champion. Drew McIntyre wouldn't hear any of those criticisms. And in my mind, I'd love a Drew McIntyre who wouldn't give Cody a title shot, right? Because you say, well, how is Cody working against anything? He's just going to get a rematch against Drew McIntyre at Saturday night's main event. But what if he didn't? What if Drew said no? What if even as Nick Aldis was trying to make this match with Cody Rhodes, Drew McIntyre had some kind of bylaws that showcased, I don't know, the same way John Cena couldn't be part of the PWI 500, even though he should have been number 1. Or Roman Reigns couldn't be part of the PWI 500 because there are technicalities and bylaws and they didn't have enough matches or whatever it was. What if there is something in the bylaws and said, well, Cody Rhodes hasn't technically earned a rematch. Cody Rhodes has received X number of title matches this year. Cody Rhodes already received a rematch. Cody Rhodes only defended the title once. Cody Rhodes only did this, and he actually made Cody Rhodes go through these steps. And in the meantime, he gave other people title opportunities, but he made Cody earn it. He made Cody go on a journey to get that title back. And I'm not saying Cody has to go through the Royal Rumble. I'm not saying Cody has to go through any of this. I don't even think Drew McIntyre's title reign would have to go all the way to WrestleMania. It's just those sometimes shock and awe moments are great. And by the way, you could put the title on Drew and then go, let's just see. Let's just see what the reaction is. If it's cooled down a little bit and people are ready to go back to it, then, in January, you can put the title back on Cody Rhodes and have him go into WrestleMania as champion. Or if people are digging this journey that Cody's on, let it go on a little bit longer. Who's to say? But then I thought about it a little bit more. And I realized that there is an element. And also bookending an insane week, right? Having Seth get turned on by the Vision on Monday and having Cody lose the title on Friday would have been like, what the hell is going on in the WWE in the best way possible? People want to tune in to be like, what the hell is going on this show? I think people are going to tune into Raw to be like, what's going on with the World Championship? Is Seth actually injured? Is Seth actually off television? Who's the champion? I think, and I think the same way you could do it on SmackDown with this. But then the more I thought about it, the more I like, well, you do have a built-in story here. Look, Drew McIntyre is really, really good at pointing out truths in situations. Drew McIntyre is really good at utilizing logic better than anybody else. Almost all of Drew McIntyre's heel promos are true. He's not wrong when he says the things that he says. And I'm watching Cody Rhodes, and he hits Drew McIntyre with the title. And Cody Rhodes is, next week on SmackDown, going to get cheered. Cody Rhodes is going to come in as a babyface, and Drew McIntyre is going to get booed. And Drew McIntyre is really good at getting booed. And Cody Rhodes is really good at getting cheered. And that's why I love these two together. And I do like that this is complicated things. So even though you saw the match at WrestlePalooza, you're ready for more Cody and Drew because of this wrinkle in the story. And the wrinkle is that the one thing that made John Cena a bad guy was that he would stop at nothing. Literally, the thing that made John Cena a bad guy was that he hit Cody with the belt. John Cena doing exactly to Cody Rhodes what Cody Rhodes did to Drew McIntyre was the thing that made John Cena a bad guy. John Cena hitting Cody Rhodes with that title was the thing that made people question the legitimacy of John Cena's title reign when he called himself the last real champion. When John Cena did it to Cody Rhodes, it was dishonorable. It was a betrayal of his own character. And I don't mean that as a storyline. I mean that as the character's character, if that makes sense. And yet Cody Rhodes is over here. And at WrestleMania, he's got too much character to hit John Cena with the title. At WrestleMania, his value system is too high to hit John Cena with the title. And now he's hitting Drew McIntyre with the title. He's doing to Drew McIntyre what John Cena did to Cody Rhodes, what John Cena did to R-Truth, what John Cena did to, I believe, Randy Orton. What John Cena did to people when John Cena was the worst of the worst. And somehow Cody Rhodes is still a good guy. Somehow Cody Rhodes is still honorable. And that, I hope, is something that this version of Drew McIntyre brings to the table. That is something that Drew McIntyre needs to push forward. That little story beat, to me, is the only thing that kind of makes it okay that Drew McIntyre didn't win the title. If you didn't have that thing, because then I go, a DQ finish, it's a little underwhelming. But a DQ finish is such a better story than Drew McIntyre getting pinned, especially a DQ finish that Cody himself caused. Now when Drew McIntyre calls Cody Rhodes a coward, he's got every reason to do it. Cody Rhodes went against his own morals. Cody Rhodes, whether it was because he led with his heart instead of his brain or for any other reason, won the match in a cowardly way. He got himself disqualified. He didn't even technically win the match, but he was able to leave with the championship in a cowardly way. And now the pull-apart brawl was great. The pull-apart brawl at the end of SmackDown was fabulous. But it was still a different Cody. Drew McIntyre has not changed. And I think that Drew is going to be able to bring that forward in this story with Cody Rhodes. And more maybe than anybody else that Drew McIntyre has faced, Drew is going to be able to now question the audience. Why do you cheer this man? Why do you cheer this man? I would have beaten him last week. He knows that. He knows I would have beaten him last week. I didn't challenge him to a match last week. Drew was happy just having his hand raised because his opponent was unable to compete. Drew was going to take the forfeit win and move on to a different date and time to wrestle Cody Rhodes when both men have had time to prepare. It was Cody that insisted on having the match right then. It was Cody that Drew would probably argue found himself in deeper water than he realized. And it was Cody that ended the match with a disqualification loss, allowing him to keep the championship. Cody Rhodes is as big a babyface who gets universally cheered as has existed since Hulk Hogan. The only babyface on the level of Cody Rhodes' babyface is John Cena, and John Cena wasn't universally cheered. So Drew McIntyre has every right to ask the audience, why are you cheering for this man as a good guy when he's not a good guy? He did something that bad guys do. He's going to be able to phrase it a little more eloquently than that, but he still has absolutely every right to question the morals of Cody Rhodes. Now, at the same time, what did Drew McIntyre say at the beginning of that match? He said that I did not attack Jacob Fatu. He said, Nick, you know me. You know I wouldn't have done that. I don't care who did it. I don't care that it happened. If anything, I'm glad that it happened. But you know that's not how I operate. I did not do that. I am so glad that when we needed to find an angle, because the rumor is that Jacob Fatu is going to be out of action for a little while with some kind of injury that nobody really knows what it is. But I am so glad that, honestly, it's become a whodunit. It's become a discussion point for all of us to have. You'll be able to leave in the comment on YouTube or leave in a review on the podcast feed. Who done it? Who? And maybe this is the mystery of the fall. Maybe this is the mystery of Q4 in WWE. Who knocked out Jacob Fatu's teeth? I thought it was a really strong visual that they left us with Jacob Fatu bleeding out of his mouth and his teeth on the ground in front of him. You know, I thought they kept him strong by not showing an attack. They kept him strong by not just having, a gang of hoodlums beat him up and leave him laying. Something happened to him. His teeth got knocked out of his mouth. They won't let him compete. He'd probably compete, even though Drew McIntyre called him Bleeding Gums Jacob, which is a sick Simpsons reference. However, instead of saying all gas, no brains, he probably should have said all gas, no teeth. You know what I mean? All due respect to Jacob Fatu, because as everybody knows, Fatu! That's how we get down on Notsam Wrestling. So I love that not only was this potential injury turned into a great visual, but also turned into a full-on angle that we are waiting to find out when Jacob Fatu comes back. So two things. When Jacob Fatu comes back, it's time. When Jacob Fatu comes back, it truly is all gas, no brakes. When Jacob Fatu comes back, I think it's time for the push. I think it's time for the potential to be realized. I think it's time to see if everything that we think is there is there. It's time to put Jacob Fatu into the main event scene when he's back. Because not only are we ready to see him in the main event scene, but he's going to be missed while he's gone. And it's going to be a big deal when he comes back, especially because who knows at that point what angle you'll insert him into. But I think it's got to be a big angle. I think whatever big angle you have going on, you somehow connect that with his teeth. And then that's the first thing. And then the next thing, you're talking about the world title. And you're talking about finding out if Jacob Fatu really is that guy to hold the championship, whether it's the World Heavyweight Championship or whether it's the WWE Championship. And I think this opportunity also enables you to bring him back to either Raw or SmackDown to face whichever champion makes the most sense for Jacob Fatu to eventually chase. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's not two angles. Maybe it's one angle. Maybe when Jacob Fatu is back, whoever you can attach to him losing his teeth is already holding a title, right? I think, listen, when you're trying to figure out now who it could be, of course it could end up being Drew McIntyre. If you want to go back to Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre, which you never really did, right? You never really got to sink in and do this is the Jacob Fatu versus Drew McIntyre story, match, definitive moment. And, Drew being a heel, he's got the luxury of being allowed to lie. It would be a little bit against his character, and to me, I think it would feel a little retcon-y, but that's never stopped anything before. If it makes the most sense when Jacob Fatu comes back to have Drew McIntyre as a rival, then you go right for Drew McIntyre. And by the way, the rivalry could be based on Jacob thinking that Drew McIntyre is responsible for his injury. And then you do a whole rivalry, and maybe Drew is the champion, and you've got a championship match and all this stuff happening. And then once you're done with Drew, then you find out who really did it. It's like when Austin came back and Rikishi did it for The Rock. Rikishi hit Stone Cold Steve Austin with a car. And so we're moving forward with Rikishi as a heel. And once that didn't work, you just go, okay, Rikishi didn't really do it. He was lying. It was Triple H. And now you move on to Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Triple H. So maybe Jacob comes back. He says, I know you did it, Drew. Jacob versus Drew. Jacob beats Drew. And then somebody steps forward and goes, you're wrong, Jacob. Drew didn't do it. It was me. It was me all along. And then you can move on to that. However you want to do it, it's all there because you have left it as this whodunit. So So as we're looking at it, I mean, we didn't see the Vision on SmackDown, obviously, but that's not to say they weren't there at all. They've been on SmackDown before. Is it possible that it was Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed? I think Jacob Fatu having a match with Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed, or having a story with Braun Breaker or Bronson Reed, could be incredibly compelling. I would not be shocked at all if they said that's exactly who it was. Now, the why, I mean, it really depends, right? Because as you're shaping up to War Games, maybe the idea becomes, well, some heel team is trying to take out baby faces that would have been very valuable at War Games. Maybe that's a direction that they go in. Maybe the Vision thought that Jacob Fatu was rising through the ranks too quickly, and he wasn't part of their vision of the future. That's probably the better one than the War Games. I mean, that's if it's the Vision. I think Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed could step forward and go, yeah, well, we're the guy. Everybody says Jacob Fatu is next in line. He literally had a number one contenders match. Well, guess what? We don't see it that way. We don't see Jacob Fatu as the next guy. Jacob Fatu is not part of the rare air that we breathe up here, and he is not part of the future of the WWE, and we're the ones. Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker, and Paul Heyman are the ones in control of all that, so we decided to take him out while we are building what is the new foundation. You could go there. That works for me. Obviously, as I said, Drew McIntyre line could be it. You could say it's the MFTs, although, and hopefully we'll have time to talk about that later, but the MFTs, I don't know if it would make sense for them to be the ones who did this, because it seems like the MFTs have a problem with two types of people. Number one, champions. They have a problem with champions because they want to be the ones with the titles. Number two, people in still photo. They don't like people in still photo. So, and Ray Phoenix had to find that out the hard way. Now, Jacob Fatu, I mean, maybe you could stretch it and go, well, we wanted to make sure you weren't going to be the number one contender. We wanted to make sure that we were in line for that, even though this doesn't really put them in line for number one contendership. But you could maybe say, since it was a number one contenders match, and the MFTs want to make sure that they control all the titles, that they wanted to make sure that Jacob Fatu didn't, and therefore they kicked all of his teeth out of his mouth before he had the opportunity to be number one contender. That's something you could say. I'd prefer that to going back to the bloodline stuff, but you could say that. It could be the MFTs. I mean, who knows? Right now, I think that when you look at the roster, Aleister Black is going to be somebody that you look at. Aleister Black threw fire all over Damian Priest's face. He's got Zelina Vega at his side now. Clearly, this is a guy who's playing chess. And the beautiful thing about having characters that play chess, not checkers, is that you can go back and attribute all kinds of actions to things that they did. See, he was right the whole time. He knew what was happening. When in reality, it's just because you go, oh, this guy this and that guy that. What if we say that he did this? Okay, we could say that. That's another direction that you could potentially go in. But honestly, at a point, especially if Jacob Fatu is going to come back a babyface, when you're talking about Aleister Black, if you've got Jacob Fatu as a babyface, if Cody Rhodes is going to stay a babyface, it feels like you've got babyfaces. Damian Priest may be better off as a heel. And maybe this is the way you turn him. Maybe you wait a couple months. Damian Priest still stays a babyface for a while. But, if you realize that there are enough babyfaces at the top of that card, then you go, okay, let's turn Damian Priest again. Let's have him be a heel. And how do you do that? Well, he's the one who busted Jacob Fatu's teeth out of his mouth because Jacob Fatu was getting too much. Either way, I think, like I said, unless they're going to give it to whoever the champion is at the time, unless they're going to attribute that to him, I think that it should be a big match that you can then lead into a world title feud. But honestly, of all those things that I just brought up, the Vision kind of works best for me and is the most logical in the sense that, the Vision would say, well, you were rising up the ranks fast. All of us are talking the same way when we have that conversation. Who are the future main eventers of WrestleMania? Who's next up? Who's this? Who's that? You go, Braun Breaker, you go Jacob Fatu. Everybody mentions Jacob Fatu. So the idea that that is happening, and now Jacob Fatu is on the precipice of a number one contenders match that they think he might win. I think with that context, both the MFTs and the Vision could be put into that role. I think I'd rather go to the Vision, personally. But that's just me. I'd love to know what you think. And I didn't come up. You know what I should? I'll ask ChatGPT. I'll just go to it for AI. And we'll figure it out that way. We'll get right back to it. But I've got to tell you, the number one question, that I get asked is, how do you do it all? How do you do 2 podcasts? You got 3 kids. You got a job with WWE. You got radio shows on Sirius, all in one day. Well, listen, it used to be really tough. I used to skip meals. I could feel it, right? I would think I'd just be able to go from thing to thing to thing, maybe eat a big dinner at the end of the day, and I was wrong. I was completely depleted halfway into the day. I felt sick all the time, and I realized that I needed sustenance. I needed meals. I needed Huel. So I started drinking Huel Black Edition, right? Huel Black Edition is 35 grams of protein. It's 6 grams of fiber. It's 27 essential vitamins and minerals. There's no sugar. It's gluten-free. It's under $5 per meal, and it's ready to go. But when I need that refreshment, when I need the extra, well, the stuff that I would get from maybe vegetables and stuff like that, I go for the Daily Greens, okay? Daily Greens was developed by registered nutritionists and dietitians. There's 42 vitamins, minerals, and superfoods in this thing. Only 25 calories, 4 grams of fiber, and there's only 1 gram of sugar, and it's delicious. So this is the peach and hibiscus. But and you would know, by the way, when I tell you it's delicious, I'm telling you the truth, because if you're watching the video of this, you would see it all over my face if I didn't like it. You know how I am with food, and Huel really has saved things for me. Huel makes healthy eating simple. They just launched into Target stores nationwide. So you can try both products now, today, with 15% off your purchase. For new customers with my exclusive code, NOTSAM, at Huel.com/NotSam. Use my code and fill out the post-checkout survey to help support the show. By the way, everybody panicking about WWE and AI. I think we're going to talk about this later in the week because we have a lot to get to here. But, I mean, the story itself said that WWE was using AI for creative services. Creative services is a department in the WWE. It's been talked about on Bruce Pritchard's podcast. Creative services is the department that comes up with graphics and video. You know, they're the photo video kind of department, like advertising materials, stuff like that. So I think that more so than just using ChatGPT to have them write storylines for you, I think it was probably more looking into using ChatGPT to tell stories through video and photos, which has already been happening, by the way. Like the Grande Americano, it looked to me like there was AI in that. So, you know, I don't know. I think if people start losing jobs in favor of AI, that becomes something to get a bit more concerned about. But if you're just to not utilize AI as a tool for anybody really is something where you risk falling behind, I think. But whatever, we'll have larger conversations about that. AEW put on a big pay-per-view over the weekend. Wrestledream was on Saturday night. I feel like we've been saying this for the last several shows, maybe all of the shows ever. It was a great show. It was a long show. And I think the 8:00 start time, and I'm probably just, too old for it because I get tired, I'm not ready to be up until 12:30, 1 o'clock in the morning. I mean, and I'm entertained by all of it. And I'm not sitting there looking at it going, take that off the show, take that off the show. That was a waste of time. That was a waste of time, because it really is all great matches. And it is pretty much all matches. Like their video packages between matches are like a minute and a half, and then they go right to the next match, right to the next match, right to the next match. You certainly don't have any sort of qualms about what you're spending your money on, since they're still on that pay-per-view model. But I do think and I think what it is too is if the show started at 11 o'clock in the morning, and I think about this because nowadays, and I was on the JBL and Gerald Briscoe podcast, which I loved. being invited to do that and talking to those two legends. It's amazing. Hey, Sam, would you do our podcast? Gerald Briscoe and JBL? Yes, I would do your podcast. Are you kidding me? I should be begging you to do mine, and you should be telling me no. Would I do your podcast? Yeah, I would do your podcast. But the conversation about the globaling, like wrestling getting a much more global audience came up. And I really do think that a big part of it is the normalization of shows being on at all hours of the day. And so much of that has to do with streaming and the WWE's model of not paying for individual events, but paying for services. And those services making deals with WWE to broadcast these events. But it's enabled, Monday Night Raw to be on at 8 o'clock in the morning. It's enabled pay-per-views to be on at noon. It's enabled all this stuff because you can still watch wrestling live, even if it's coming from a different part of the world. And so part of that has definitely increased the fan base. Part of that, of course, it takes a little bit of getting used to because you are used to wrestling being on in the evening. But honestly, for me, it kind of spoiled me. It kind of spoiled me in the sense that, I love when wrestling's on earlier in the day. And I really think that if AEW's pay-per-views came on at 11 o'clock in the morning, they could go 10 hours for all I care. I'll watch a great 10-hour pay-per-view. I would love to see that. But I'd like for it to start before lunchtime. So Wrestledream ended up being with the Tailgate show, which is full of matches. It was a 5.5 hour show, 7 to 12:30, something like that, which is a long show. But everything was good, man. And the pay-per-view itself started with a really interesting way to do things, which is FTR and Jet Speed, which is Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight, were in the middle of a tag match on the Tailgate show, on the preview show, which was in the Collision. It was labeled as Collision. You could watch it on TNT and on HBO Max as part of the HBO Max subscription, or just on TNT. It was a show. And at 8 o'clock on the dot, they said, look, this match is still going on. Tune into the pay-per-view to see it. And the FBI warning comes up on the pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view starts with the commentary saying, welcome to Wrestledream, and the pyro starts going off while the match is going on in the middle of the ring. And the fans are going crazy, and all four guys are in the ring, and clearly in a spot that was worked out to go right alongside that pyro. All four guys are in the ring hitting each other while this pyro is going off, while the fans are going crazy. Nobody quite knows what's going on. It becomes unpredictable. It feels like a thing. I thought it was a great way to start the show. I thought there were some people that, anybody that, if you didn't like it, that's fine. But anybody that thought it was not done on purpose, anybody that was going, well, you got to know how long a TV show is. That's really disingenuous criticism, because clearly this was done on purpose. Clearly this was done. And honestly, why do you do a pre-show? Why does a pay-per-view have a show on right in front of it on regular TV? The answer: to convince people at the last minute to buy the pay-per-view. And if you're going to put on a massive match like FTR versus Jet Speed and have it be great, it's no different. And this has happened in AEW, this happened in WWE too, than doing the intros on the pre-show. You could argue, well, it is different because that match was advertised for the pre-show, but you really mean to tell me that there was a huge audience that was planning on just watching the 7 to 8 p.m. Collision and then not ordering the pay-per-view, and then they're going to be mad that they didn't get the result of the match live? WCW did this back in the day. They main evented Nitro with Hollywood Hogan versus the Giant. And there was a new Robin Hood show premiering right after Nitro. And they started the match with 5 minutes left in the show. And they go, oh my God, fans, we're going to keep going with this match, but we have to start this Robin Hood show, but we're going to break in during the commercials. It still felt kind of fun and unpredictable, but it was also annoying because the last thing I wanted to do was watch Robin Hood, but I did. It was a ploy to get you to watch Robin Hood, and then during the commercials for the first half of the show, they were going back to Hollywood Hulk Hogan versus the Giant. or whatever it was. I mean, but I was watching. But it's very similar to that, except as a pay-per-view. You know, WWE would do similar things when Sunday Night Heat was on. Sunday Night Heat would be on MTV from 7 to 8 p.m., and then the pay-per-view would start at 8 p.m., and if you had something big or something hot, you'd want it to bleed right into the pay-per-view. And I think that's what AEW did, and I really do think that they created like a really massive moment, and it started the show with a ton of energy, man. It really worked in starting that show, having that pyro go off while the match is going and everything's happening. It was just a really, really cool thing. Some of the highlights of the show were, first of all, you know, the Young Bucks versus Jurassic Express match was great. The modernizing of the Jurassic Express tag team, like putting Jack Perry and Luchasaurus back into that group where fans wanted them from the beginning. Nothing that they've done since Jurassic Express has worked like Jurassic Express, except that, you know, they bring them forward now in a little bit of a more mature, more developed way. And they come across, even though it's a boy and his dinosaur, they come across as much more serious contenders. Actually, I think the whole tag team division in AEW took a massive leap forward with this WrestleDream show. So I thought that match was great. The Young Bucks coming out to the blank check graphics, I thought was hilarious. You know the movie Blank Check? That screen that they came out to was what Mr. McIntosh saw when he realized that he only had $32 left in his account. And then, you know, the production team is messing with them. I love this whole Young Bucks story. I love that they lost. I love that it keeps going. And then you had the Callis family come out and jump Jurassic Express at the end of the match after Jurassic Express had won this great tag team match, and the Young Bucks did not help them. Even though they extended their hands to the Bucks did not help them. Kenny Omega came out, told the Bucks, get back in there and help them, and the Bucks said no. However, they didn't say no with an attitude. They almost reluctantly said no. We still can't. No, we still can't. And that right there, that was the tease. That was the tease to me for when the Bucks will finally be made whole. It's whenever the Elite is back together. You know, at some point, it's going to be the Bucks and Omega, and the Jungle Express are going to be a part of that too. And that's when the Bucks will be whole again. I think that's what this journey is leading to. But right now, we still get some more time with the broke-ass Young Bucks, and I think I just love it. I love it because it's different than the way we've seen it portrayed before. You know, like Baron Corbin did an amazing job when he was playing a character that was broke. But this idea that, like, they misallocated company funds, so now they owe the company money. And they pissed off the production crew, so that's why their graphics and stuff are messed up. I just think it's been done really, really well. I think it's the best stuff the Bucks have done in a very long time. Tony Storm lost to Chris Statlander, which was not a huge surprise at all. I thought that would happen. I'm happy for Chris Statlander. I'm always glad that there's a kind of a fresh coat of paint on the women's division where you now have this champion that you never know when she's going to drop the title. But all that said, let me get back to it, because then you had Mercedes Moné come out and tell Chris Statlander, Mercedes Moné stole Chris Statlander's moment, right? Because this was the moment. She won the championship. I know she walked in defending champion, but she won the championship in a multi-person match. She beat Tony Storm clean in a one-on-one match to retain the championship. This was the moment she became the true champion. And Mercedes coming out and then saying, just get out of my ring. And then Chris just getting out. Like, she kind of made the, like, I'm watching you, Fokker gesture with her eyeballs. And then she came out later and made good on it. But, like, I don't know. I would have liked Chris to get in her face a little bit. I would have liked some reluctancy. I mean, if I'm the champion, I'm not just letting somebody, I don't care if they are Mercedes Moné, I'm not just letting somebody steal my moment like that. So, Ultimo Moné came out. Ultimo Moné with her 10 championships, and she said she had put the challenge out to any champion that wants to go title for title with the TBS championship. The interim Ring of Honor television champion, who technically Ring of Honor is not on television. Mina Shirakawa came out. I was happy to see Mina. Big Mina Shirakawa fan. Who isn't? Great match with Mercedes. Mercedes, obviously, no surprise, obviously ends up winning. Now Mercedes has 11 championships and makes it clear, and I think the match was made in the press conference, that at the November pay-per-view at Full Gear, they're going to do, I believe they said this, Chris Statlander versus Mercedes, title for title, which is nuts because it's hard for me to believe that Chris Statlander's reign would end that quickly, but it's also hard for me to believe that Mercedes would take another loss. She took a loss to Toni Storm, and that was massive. But it's like she took a loss to Toni Storm. That builds Toni up even higher. Now Toni has taken a loss to Chris Statlander, so that energy should be passed forward. But now it looks like Chris Statlander is going to be wrestling Mercedes. So if Chris doesn't wrestle Mercedes, what was the point of Chris beating Toni? But if Chris does beat Mercedes, I don't know. Is she still Ultimo Mercedes, except now Chris has both the TBS title and the world title? I don't know. I feel like both results of that are very confusing. But what we were left with was Renee interviewing Toni Storm and saying, what's next? And Toni Storm said, I have nothing. And Mina Shirakawa showed up and said, you have me. And the two of them looked at each other lovingly. And of course, they advertised it. They shouldn't have advertised it because it was clear what was going on. They advertised that the women's tag team championship tournament, I believe, the brackets are going to get announced on Dynamite. And clearly, Toni Storm and Mina Shirakawa are they're this tag team division. They're the big team in this women's tag team division. And look, man, while I think it is important to put strong people in that division to make the division stronger, the more I thought about it, and I'm happy Chris Statlander is the champion, but the more I thought about it, the more I was like, man, they better make some gold out of this, because Toni Storm is one of, if not the biggest stars in AEW. Toni Storm might be the biggest star in AEW. And she's definitely the biggest star made in AEW. When they first took the title off Toni Storm, I was like, oh, that's fun. The title's back, in contention. Now really seeing it not on Toni Storm and that Toni Storm is just not in the conversation for that title right now, I go, I don't know if that's going to, I don't know. I kind of feel like Toni Storm should be champion. It kind of starts to feel like when Hogan wasn't champion. And I know that's crazy, but honestly, Toni Storm in AEW in the women's division is as close to Hogan in the men's division in WWF was as you're going to get. And it's like when the Warrior or Macho Man or whoever it was champion instead of Hogan, Hogan was still the top guy on the card. And no other champion was really able to get fully over. No other champion could be that level champion. Because as much as it was like Warrior versus Rude was that big world title match at SummerSlam 1990, you were really keyed into Hogan and the Earthquake, And as much as Macho had this feud with DiBiase and everything, it was really all about the mega powers. It was Hogan that was adding that star power. And I feel like Toni Storm is kind of in that position where it's like, even if she's not the AEW champion, if she still is commanding the highest level of attention in the women's division, and I kind of think she will, you almost go, well, then shouldn't she be champion? So it'll be interesting to see how that pans out. Speaking of champions, you had the AEW Men's Championship match between Adam Page and Samoa Joe. Adam Page wins clean, and the Ops turn on Adam Page. Samoa Joe turns heel and beats down Adam Page. You're not worthy of holding the AEW championship. And he hit Adam Page with the championship. I'm trying to tell you. I'm trying to tell Cody Rhodes. This is what heels do. He hit Adam Page with the championship. So that also makes sense because the Hurt Business became the number one contenders for the Trios championship. So now you move on to the Ops versus the Hurt Business. I don't believe the Ops are going to lose that. But it's interesting. MVP's wrestling again. So, we'll see. We'll see. You have the tag team championship match, which is Brodito versus the IWGP champion Takeshita and the AEW Unified Champion Okada. And Okada's not a very good tag team partner. He, quote unquote, accidentally hits Takeshita, flips him off when he says he's sorry. And ultimately, a one-armed Bandito is able to get a clean pin on Okada. And nobody has gotten a clean pin on Okada. I think he's been pinned maybe once since he's gotten to AEW, and I don't think it was clean. Okada doesn't lose like that. Okada is still Okada. I mean, I think the only reason he hasn't been in the AEW world title scene, which maybe you could argue he should have been, is because he ain't losing to anybody. So it's like, unless you're ready to put the title on Okada and just leave it on him, keep him out of the scene because he ain't losing. And Bandito is the one who gets a victory over him. I thought this was a huge match. And I mean, look, we all know Takeshita is great. We all know Okada is generational. We all know Bandito is great. But, man, I've got to tell you, Brody King is awesome. Brody King is fantastic. And this was a fantastic tag match. Then you went to your I Quit match, which was Mox versus Darby. And, you know, this was awesome. It was throughout almost the whole match. Nuts. What I wanted. The idea of, well, nobody got lit on fire, which I was shocked by because, I mean, Mox even did get doused in lighter fluid, but he did not get lit on fire, which is almost like introducing the loaded gun and then not shooting it. It's like, well, why'd you introduce it then? But they made up for a lack of fire by an element called water. We've seen suffocation by a plastic bag. We've seen people getting lit on fire. We have not seen a drowning. And Mox and the Death Riders pulled out a fish tank, and they filled it up with water. And then he dunked Darby Allin's head in it for like 45 seconds or a minute. It seemed like a lot. It seemed like a long time. Maybe it wasn't that long. It seemed like a long time. But Darby Allin was able to survive it just when it looked like he had nothing left. The lights go out. He was getting drowned. Lights go out. And boom, Sting is there. And I've got to tell you with Sting, okay? When Sting started growing that big, long beard, because Sting said this year he's going to do autograph signings in his face paint. But after this year, he's not going to put the face paint on anymore. And I got bummed out for people who were going to those signings because he grew that big beard, right? And I said, well, if you're getting photos with Sting in his face paint, why does he have to have that giant beard? You know, I don't think that that's all that necessary. That's not what Sting looked like. But, man, when Sting showed up with his white hair and his giant white beard, to me it was like crazy old man who's had enough, get off of my lawn, full Gran Torino, Sting. Crazy ass, old man strength, you damn kids get off my lawn, Sting, is a new version of Sting that I didn't realize that I needed to see, but I needed to see it. Sting drops Jon Moxley, breaks the aquarium, the fish tank, with his baseball bat, and then gives his baseball bat to Darby Allin as he takes Marina Shafir over his shoulder and heads to the back with her. Darby breaks some more of the tank. Then he hits Mox in his knees with Sting's bat. He puts him in the Scorpion Deathlock, which I was like, okay, maybe they're going to make use of the glass that's on the ground. Maybe because there are puddles of water, Mox will pass out because he's in the water. But I mean, I don't know, man. He was in the Scorpion Deathlock for like 10 seconds, and then he just said, I quit. It felt like a quick I quit. The match was great. The whole pay-per-view was great. It was a wonderful pay-per-view. I did feel like Mox quit incredibly fast. Like, and maybe it was because there was glass in the ring and they didn't want to bleed out. Maybe, I have no idea why. Maybe there was a reason why they kind of rushed to the end. But it just felt like that could have been a very, very dramatic moment that went really quick. You know, much quicker than like setting up the aquarium, much quicker than a lot of the moments in that match. So I would have liked that moment to to have been a longer moment. Maybe that means there'll be more Mox Darby Allin stuff. Maybe that means Mox is going to be in trouble with the Death Riders. It does open up all that stuff. But I would love to know what was behind the decision to make it that quick. But it was a great pay-per-view. A lot of fun to watch. Guys, we're going to get right back to it, but we all know that life's been a little crazy lately, right? I think it's been that way for all of us, whether it's the world around us or whether it's locally. What's happening right in front of your face, waking up every day and dealing with what's in front of you. It's stressful. It can be tough. One of the things that can help you unwind, Cornbread Hemp's CBD gummies. Yes, you see, cornbread, they only use the best part of the hemp plant. They use the flower for the purest and the most potent CBD. It's formulated to help relieve discomfort, stress, and even sleeplessness. No more counting sheep. I can't count that high. This has helped me not have to learn all these numbers that I never knew. All products, by the way, are third-party lab tested and USDA organic to make sure that they're pure and that they're safe. Right now, Notsam Wrestling listeners can save 30% on their first order. All you have to do is go to cornbreadhemp.com/notsam and then use code notsam at checkout. That's cornbreadhemp.com/notsam and use code notsam at checkout. Who knows? Maybe you get a couple extra hours of sleep. Maybe you'll relieve some stress, or maybe you just have a good time. Speaking of injuries, we were talking about Jacob Fatu potentially being injured. That's the rumor with Seth Rollins. We put out an emergency podcast. We put out a Notsam Wrestling update. We talked about this a lot throughout the week, but we found out at the end of Monday Night Raw that the Vision had officially turned on Seth Rollins. Braun Breaker spears Seth Rollins out of his plaid. Bronson Reed makes the decision to tsunami Seth Rollins after Braun Breaker leaves it up to him. And then Paul Heyman, who's shocked, who doesn't know what to do, does decide to raise the arms of Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed and saying, well, I guess this is the Vision now. Now, right after that, a lot of people said it's because Seth Rollins is injured. He actually injured his shoulder, they said, on the internet, doing that coast-to-coast headbutt on Cody Rhodes, which that does look like a move that could have a lot of ramifications, and maybe that was one of them. Obviously, the Vision turn is a massive step. It coincidentally came 48 hours after Bronson Reed had pinned Roman Reigns. I think you would argue that Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed are both in full top heel positions. Earlier in the week, I said, and I stand by it, that if Seth is gone, I don't feel like he comes back a heel. I feel like he comes back a babyface. I think it's an edgy babyface. I think it's an edgy babyface that still believes in the Vision. You know, I think it's the same Seth that flipped off Punk when Punk returned to WWE. I think it's the same Seth that saved Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, even though he didn't love Cody. He teamed with Cody despite the fact that he didn't agree with him. You know, I think it's a Seth Rollins that believes that he is still the future of wrestling. But now he realizes he has to do it on his own because these guys aren't the guys that he thought they were. And the fact that he's doing it on his own, to me, is what makes him a babyface, right? It's a non-conventional babyface, maybe. It's not what we're used to seeing. But I think a babyface nonetheless, to me anyway. And you don't change much, you know what I mean? It's just who his opponents are, what he's fighting. He's fighting for the same thing, just who he's fighting with and how he's going about doing it. You know, I think he's doing it for less selfish reasons. You know, it's the same way that he knew that Roman couldn't be champion. You know, he can maintain a lot of the same rivalries because even as a babyface, he did not like CM Punk. Even as a babyface, he didn't like Roman Reigns, and he still wouldn't like this version of Roman Reigns. You know, he can still be a babyface and feel that way. But I think, much like Roman Reigns is still to this day, his first beef is going to be with this new Vision. I think that the only difference will be that Seth is now doing it with a little more conviction. which is all, that's what makes a babyface. So, the question ends up, what happens to the championship? Is the title vacated? I'm thinking Braun Breaker versus CM Punk feels like it could happen at Saturday night's main event. I think you could end up with Bronson Reed in line for a championship match after he beat Roman Reigns. You could make that argument. Maybe Paul Heyman's able to make the argument that it should be CM Punk versus Braun versus Bronson for the World Heavyweight title. Maybe you're going to do some kind of 5-way match with four-way. Maybe you do a fatal 4-way with the other two from the number one contenders match, LA Knight, Jey Uso, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed, because both Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed, Braun Breaker took out the champion, Bronson Reed beat Roman Reigns. I think that feels like it puts them in line, but either way, I do think you vacate the title and go to Saturday night's main event with a championship match involving CM Punk. And I think what's really fun about all this is we don't know where it goes. We don't know if Seth is going to be out or how long he's going to be out for. We don't know if this affects War Games, let alone if this affects the Royal Rumble or WrestleMania. But honestly, man, I think that a lot of times when WWE is in scramble mode, the best stuff happens. Stuff that wasn't on the path happens. Well, we have to change everything right now. So what would be something cool that we can do right now and we'll figure out the rest later? I mean, historically, that's when a lot of the best stuff has happened. And it kind of is a bit of a lesson. That's how WrestleMania 40 happened, and WrestleMania 40 was the best. So I'm really anxious, and I'm sure they're figuring out right now what to do with the title, what to do with War Games, what to do with all of it. If Seth and Jacob are out, those are two names that some people had. I think everybody thought Seth would be involved in War Games. I think some people thought Jacob would be involved in War Games. Who knows? Who knows where it's all going? And who knows what the championship picture is even going to look like by the time we get to the end of this year. It's really, really, really pretty crazy. Speaking of the championship picture, before we get to emails, how about this? We had a title change this week. Ilja Dragunov is back. Ilja Dragunov returns on SmackDown. Sami Zayn insists, and I loved that Sami Zayn insisted on doing the United States Open Challenge. They said, no, Sami, we don't have it booked this week. Sami Zayn said, no, I'm doing it. And he goes out there, United States Open Challenge, and who answers but Ilja Dragunov? Ilja Dragunov, who followed the AJ Styles, Randy Orton protocol, put on, pounds of lean muscle, just built that frame of his up, coming back looking like a beast, added a neck tattoo. And let me tell you something right now, okay? If you are an aspiring wrestler, and aspiring wrestlers are always looking for advice, even if you're already in the WWE but trying to figure out how to make your way up the card, listen closely. Tattoo your neck. Tattoo your neck, okay? There are currently 4 main roster men's singles championships. The world title, the WWE title, the United States title, the Intercontinental title. 3 out of those 4 are people with neck tattoos. Dominic has a neck tattoo. He's got the AAA Mega Championship and the Intercontinental Championship. Cody Rhodes has a neck tattoo. Maybe that's why Drew McIntyre didn't win on SmackDown, because Cody Rhodes still WWE champion. Okay? Ilja Dragunov adds a neck tattoo. Immediately is the United States champion. I am very anxious to see. I wouldn't be surprised if Corey Graves gets off commentary and is the next world heavyweight champion, because he's got a neck tattoo. And that may be why he's, such an esteemed person in the WWE broadcast field, because of the neck tattoo. Listen, right now the world heavyweight title is vacated, and WWE is trying to figure out what to do. Tattoo your neck. Who won the Royal Rumble this year? Jey Uso. What's on Jey Uso's neck? A tattoo. Okay? All I'm saying is right now, read the tea leaves. The world heavyweight title is vacated for real, I would imagine. Maybe not, but I would imagine. You want to get up the card? Tattoo your neck. You'll get the title. Ilja Dragunov wins the United States Championship. Huge win. I do think that this should be the end of the Open Challenge for now. I think that the Open Challenge, and by the way, I asked for the Open Challenge before. I said as soon as Sami Zayn won, I said get him away from the bloodline, bring back the Open Challenge, because the Open Challenge should relate to the champion, not the championship. John Cena was a perfect person to do the Open Challenge. Sami Zayn, perfect person to do the Open Challenge. Ilja Dragunov, no. Build that title. Build yourself as a champion. Remind people who you are, okay? I think that he should immediately start to become a big part of building that United States Championship division, of starting to tell those great stories. Maybe JC Mateo starts to get keyed up to have a feud for that title, something like that. I mean, part of this MFTs thing and the fact that they're all after championships now is, I think, a brilliant thing, because you can have like a situation where maybe Tama Tonga and Tonga Loa are over here trying to get the tag team championship. You can have a thing where maybe JC Mateo is over here trying to get the United States championship. You can have the MFTs all over the card because they're all after different things. And let's be honest, anybody that knows about JC Mateo's life as Jeff Cobb knows that a true JC Mateo versus Ilja Dragunov match would be unbelievable. I mean, I'm a huge Ilja fan. I think he brings an incredible and a unique realism to the way he wrestles. His finish is awesome. Just that forearm that he just lands on you from the air. And I do think, now looking at this version of Ilja Dragunov, I really think we're going to get that main roster Gunther versus Ilja match, just to bring people up to speed. Back in NXT UK, Ilja Dragunov versus Gunther is the match. It's still a classic when Gunther was Walter. I think that you can easily bring back to the main roster. The fact that Triple H is in charge, I think that's my first prediction in 2026. We will absolutely get Ilja Dragunov versus Gunther, maybe on a pay-per-view. But I think it'll be a phenomenal thing. I am so happy to see Ilja back. I think Ilja is great. He's been gone for a year, dude. A year. And I think that now it's almost like re-debuting. He had just kind of come up. He'd been around for, however long he'd been around for, but then he's gone. He's been gone longer than he was around for. So I think now, completely, brand new, fresh coat, let's go. Ilja's here, and it's time to show the world what he can do. I think he's going to be a huge addition. I think it's going to be really, really good. Maybe you have some thoughts on that. If you have thoughts on that or anything, you can email me. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is our email address. NotSamWrestling@gmail.com is our email address. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast across all audio platforms. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Leave comments, hit like, send emails in. Listen to the updates that we put out every week. We got a couple interviews on the horizon that I just taped over the weekend that are unbelievable interviews. So a lot to look forward to here on the Not Sam Wrestling feed. Make sure you're on board. Rob writes in, love your stuff. Literally can't keep up with all of it. It really is. I mean, at this point, all the Sam Roberts stuff, forget about the Not Sam Wrestling stuff. If you want to go beyond wrestling, like there is so much Sam Roberts content being pumped out on a regular basis that there's no way that any single that's a challenge. I dare anybody to listen or watch everything that I do. It's impossible. 2 thoughts. What if they went complete fan service for the last Cena match and made it a gauntlet match with 10 to 15 opponents? You get Miz in there, Dom, end it with The Rock maybe, or The Rock's proxy. No, I'm very against this gauntlet idea. Other people have proposed it to me. I think it would take everything away. I think what you do is, even if you did it with 5 opponents, you'd have 5 potentially great matches, and none of them would be great. I'd rather have one of those 5 matches be great than see all 5 of them okay because they were one after another. No, I'm very against the Cena Gauntlet match. 2, Roman has 2 Ulafalas now. Is the second one going to eventually go to Jay or Rock? Most likely Stories, in my humble opinion. Well, I don't think it's going to go to The Rock because The Rock gave it to him. I think The Rock would be considered, I mean, I think The Rock would be considered an elder. The Rock puts himself up there as high chief, which is over tribal chief. So I don't think that you'd give it to The Rock, but I wouldn't be surprised if one day Roman kind of takes that upper level and then gives one of the two Ulafalas to Jay. That I could see. That I think could be good. Connor writes in. It looks like we may be heading towards another Cody versus Drew title match. Yeah, I could see that happening maybe at Saturday night's main event. Drew insinuated in his latest post on X that Cody has many corporate people backing him. Interestingly enough, there's one very notable corporate figure on the TKO board that has been one of Drew's biggest public supporters. That person, as you well know, is The Rock. With the history between Cody Rhodes and The Rock, along with the relationship between Drew McIntyre and The Rock, could you see this next phase of Cody versus Drew feud as a way to make reference to the final boss and possibly create an intriguing opening for The Rock's return? All of this doesn't matter if The Rock is unavailable. Yeah, okay. I think, and I've said this in other scenarios, I would love for the final boss to return and announce that he has a chosen one. I would love to see the final boss again put a bow on all of this. And that is a way that he could even do it in Cena's last match. That The Rock comes back, announces he has a chosen one. And his chosen one is the same guy who was called the chosen one when he first showed up in WWE, is the first guy who in real life is the face of Project Rock, is the same guy who Rock gave a sword to, a gift to, when this person re-signed with WWE. I would like to see The Rock's chosen one be Drew McIntyre. And Drew McIntyre's real main event run is as the final boss's chosen one. And you don't have to have the final boss on television with him every single week. You don't have to have The Rock there all the time. Just the knowledge that that's the support that Drew McIntyre has. And maybe he can push his weight around a little bit more. However it is, I think that to me would be an incredible launching point for the next phase in Drew McIntyre, which I think, quite frankly, is overdue. Let's go to Avik. Question. Who is currently your Rumble winners? Who's Rumble winner, main event, WrestleMania Night 1, main event, WrestleMania Night 2. Okay, based on what's happening in front of us, I see my main events for WrestleMania are Cody versus Randy and Roman Reigns versus is it Roman versus Punk? Yeah, he has it. Yeah, Roman Reigns. Okay, I got Roman versus Punk and Cody versus Randy. I have Punk. Oh yeah, Punk would be the champion. So I have Randy winning the Rumble. This is just right now off the top of my head. And on the women's side, I had a good answer for that recently. On the women's side, yes, on the women's side winning the Rumble, I have Io winning the Rumble. I have Io Sky winning the Rumble. I have Rhea Ripley on the way to WrestleMania beating Stephanie Vaquer for the women's championship, and I have Io winning the Rumble so that you can go to WrestleMania with Rhea versus Io. So I have Cody versus Randy with Randy winning the Rumble for the men. I have Rhea versus Io with Io winning the women's Rumble. And I have, I think, Roman versus Punk, I think. Card subject to change. Camden writes in, could Cena's football Insta pick, and we did a whole thing about this, by the way. If you missed it, it's on the podcast feed. It's on the YouTube channel, the Peyton Manning, Tom Brady pick. Be referring to Roman. Cena has slated in interviews of how highly he thinks of Roman. Cena hasn't beaten Roman ever. Roman has referred to himself as the GOAT on multiple times on screen. Thoughts? I don't think that the picture is referring to Roman. I do think that there is a natural story if they wanted to do Cena versus Roman. I just don't know if that's going to happen. Mark from Tarzana writes in, Tama's back. Yeah. I love the new look / old look for the MFTs. New Japan, Guerrillas of Destiny, Dead Presidents, 100%. Love it. I'm 100% with you. I see both those. Well, I guess all three of those things as well. But what I really want to talk about is what happened to Jacob. I don't think one man could have done it unless he had a weapon. Jacob's a monster. Now, two giants working for someone else could do it, Obafemi and Omos. Together, they would be more than a match for Jacob. Interested in your thoughts on this idea? Obafemi is a heel, and he had to use Omos for help? I mean, to me, that instantly downgrades Obafemi. You know, if Obafemi comes onto the main roster as a heel who needs a giant to help him beat up Jacob Fatu, then why would I be scared of Obafemi? Would Brock Lesnar recruit a giant? No. Would Brock Lesnar recruit Omos? No, he would beat him at WrestleMania. So no, I'm anti that idea. And plus, Jacob would have to come back and beat them. I mean, I don't see how Obafemi succeeds in that scenario whatsoever. Antonio writes in, speculating wildly with social media playing some parts in WWE's decision-making in the past, do you think a PLE like Cyber Sunday or Taboo Tuesday would benefit from this era? I do not. I've always enjoyed it in the past. It would help cement guys like John Morrison, Shelton Benjamin, and Carlito as amazing mid-card performers. I mean, I don't think you need a pay-per-view to cement mid-card performers. Make Kane and the Big Show dominating tag team champion. No. Would love your thoughts on this. I hope you and the family are doing well. My OPTC won. I appreciate you very much, Antonio. The family is doing unbelievably well. However, I would say no to the Taboo Tuesday thing only because I'm much more of a fan of matches being kind of advertised. Like by default, when you're leaving it up to a fan vote, the fan vote is almost what you're tuning in for. So you can't make it a big award, a big blow-off, a big anything because it's just based on a Twitter poll. You know what I mean? All right, last email. This one's coming from Andres. Sam, what happened this past Monday on Raw? There's two questions in my head. If Seth Rollins is actually injured and the rumored plan for WrestleMania 42 is Roman versus Seth, how do you think the WrestleMania 42 card will look like without Seth? And how would Survivor Series look like without Seth? Okay, so I've got you with Punk and Roman. So I guess, just off the top of my head, I haven't given this any thought, but War Games could be Braun Breaker, Bronson Reed, Brock Lesnar, I guess Drew. And I don't know, maybe you do bring somebody up from NXT. Maybe you do bring up an Obafemi. Maybe you do bring up somebody versus a babyface team of like Roman, Punk, Jay, and then maybe like LA Knight and Jimmy, or LA Knight and Cody, or I don't know. Or John. You could put John Cena in there. I don't know. I would really have to sit down. I haven't thought about it. I'm going to wait until this week's TV to really start to put down what could happen there. Okay, I clicked on it, so I guess I'll do one more email. Jeff writes in, just started listening to you about 6 months ago. That's awesome, man. I love that. I've been doing this podcast for 11 years. The idea that you just started listening is music to my ears. I love the people that have been with me for 11 years, 9 years, 2 years, 6 months. It's so cool. I can't wait for your podcast and updates to drop. And I had to write you because the one you had overlooked for Cena's last match is Kevin Owens. Yes, I know. He had neck surgery and could still be doing rehab. Could you imagine a better return for Cena's last match? No, I honestly probably couldn't. If Kevin Owens was healthy, then I think that would be an unbelievable turn of events. If Kevin Owens just came out and he beat John Cena, it would be insane. I don't think he'll be back on time. They were saying he wouldn't even be back for WrestleMania next year, let alone December. But if that were wrong, it would be like Kevin Owens doing what Cena did at the Royal Rumble in Madison Square Garden, coming back earlier than anybody thought, surprising everybody, and then coming out on top. Yeah, I think it would be unreal if Kevin Owens did that. I just don't think it's realistic. Don't forget to subscribe. We're going to talk again this week. Like I said, interviews coming. So much going on right now. I'm glad that you're all here. Hope that you're enjoying it. Let me know if you are. Let me know if you're not. And we'll talk again soon.